Welcome to the Widowed Mom Podcast, episode 243, The Best Way to Create What You Want as a Widow.
Welcome to the Widowed Mom Podcast, the only podcast that offers a proven process to help you work through your grief, to grow, evolve, and create a future you can truly look forward to. Here's your host, Master Certified Life Coach, Grief Expert, Widow, and Mom, Krista St-Germain.
Hey there, welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm having so much fun with this little group that I created called Goal Magic. There are 9 of us, including me. It's kind of a harebrained idea I had at the end of last year. I thought, I have some goals. A goal in particular, I really want to get back to the habit of strength training and build muscle that I have lost. And I need to eat enough protein also to be doing that because I want more energy and I want to age strong. And so I thought, what would be fun is if I created a little group and invited some of my former clients to come and we could all work on a big goal for the first few months of the year. So I called it Goal Magic and we're having a blast. And everyone's working on something completely different. Well, not completely different. There are actually some themes and trends that I'm seeing, but very different goals for each woman. But I am loving it. And not even so much because of the goal. Right? I don't even think the goals matter. What I think matters is who we get to become in the pursuit of a goal. That's what matters, right? It's not about whether we create the goal or not, as much as it is about who we get to be and how we get to challenge ourselves and how we get to see ourselves differently. Because there's no goal that makes us more worthy. We're already worthy. But it is fun to really let ourselves go after the thing that we want. And so, in part, that is what brought me to this idea of today's episode, which is the best way to create what you want as a widow. Also, the reason this is on my mind is because in December, I did a training. Many of you came, and it was on self-confidence for widows, and it was really good. In fact, kind of worried that it might have been a little too good in some ways, because the feedback that we got from a lot of you was, it was amazing. Thanks so much. I learned a lot, and I love the podcast. So between that and the podcast, I'm good to go. I'm just going to keep listening, which I have really mixed feelings about because I want you to love the podcast. I want you to love all of the free teaching that I do for sure. I want you to feel hopeful after you listen to the podcast. I want you to not settle, right? And to completely advocate for the version of your life that you want until you figure out how to create it. And also, I think maybe I did a little bit of a disservice with that teaching, because I missed something. And that's what I want to share with you today. I missed it. And it's something that it took me years to figure out. And I don't want you to have to take years to learn it. I want to shorten your learning curve. So that's why we're here, right? Listening to the podcast is a great start. I love that for you. I love that a lot of you come to free workshops that I do and you hear me teach on things. And I hope that that's amazing for you. And it's not the best way to create what you want as a widow. So, okay, let me tell you one thing before I give you what you came here for. It's an important caveat. I recognize that we all have different amounts of privilege. We are not all starting on a level playing field. So for me, for example, I am a cisgendered white woman born into a middle-class family of college-educated parents who loved me dearly, gave me every opportunity, and other things, right? You would say I'm neurotypical. There are many different privileges that I have, that you have. We all have different privileges, different identities, different intersectionalities of those things. And so I really want to make sure that you know that what I'm about to say does not discount that. Okay? We go into it knowing that. Also, I am not intending to suggest that you create everything in your life. We don't. We didn't create that our partner died. We didn't create the way other people think and feel and act, right? We can't control all the things. We don't get to choose the family that we're born into. We don't get to choose the body that we have. We don't get to choose the amount of money our family had or our skin color. There are many things in this world that we don't get to choose and that we don't get to control. And also what I'm about to talk about are the things we do get to choose and the things we do get to control and the results we do get to create. Okay. So keep that in mind as you listen to this. This is about what we have the ability to control or at least to influence, not what we were just given, knowing that everyone was given something different. Deal? Okay. Right now, the results that you have in your life, the daily life that you have, is because of what you are doing with your time. So the reason you have the relationships that you have, the reason you have the job that you have, the reason you make the amount of money that you have, the reason your relationship with your kids is what it is, the quality of your friendships, the amount of stuff in your house, the length of your to-do list, the results of the investments you make, right? The results that you have in your life, the quality of your life is because of how we spend our time. Again, knowing that we all come with different privileges, right? But based on the things we can control. The results we create for ourselves are based on how we spend our time. Would you agree? What we do determines what we create. Hopefully, if you're my client, this is not new to you. You see where I'm going here already, and I'm just getting started, right? How we spend our time, right? What we do with our time is in large part because of how we're feeling. So consider the types of actions you take and how different they are when you are feeling insecure versus the types of actions you take, how you spend your time when you're feeling confident. The types of actions you take when you're feeling confused are very different from the types of actions you take when you're feeling determined. The types of actions that you take when you're feeling unworthy are really, really different from the types of actions you take when you're feeling valuable. Would you agree? What we've created depends on what we've done, and what we've done has depended in large part on how we've felt. And how we feel is caused by what's going on in our mind, by what we're thinking, by the stories we tell ourselves. And I really want you to hear this. This is important because it seems like how we feel is caused by what has happened in our lives. It seems like how we feel is caused by the fact that our person died, by the amount of money in our bank, by the number on the scale, by the words that came out of our mother-in-law's mouth, right? By what our boss said to us, by the numbers we see in our checking account. It seems like those things outside of us are what cause how we feel, and they aren't. And this is what it took me, not just years to conceptually understand. I conceptually understood this long before I knew how to apply it to my life. Okay? I don't want to oversimplify this. I say it to say it is powerful. And if you want to create what you want as a widow, you need to know this. If left to our own devices, we will simply believe the thoughts in our mind are true. They will just feel like facts. And that isn't a problem if we like what we're creating with our lives. If we like the quality of our lives, we look around and we're like, hey, this is awesome. I love all of it. That's amazing, right? We don't need to even worry about whether our thoughts are facts or not. But if you're listening to this episode of the podcast, it's probably because there is something you want to create that's different than what you have as a widow. And you want to know how to do that. And the best way to create what you want as a widow is to understand that what you're thinking is what creates your experience. And the reason that is not just because it sounds nice on a bumper sticker. It's because our thoughts create our emotional experience. And as humans, we're driven by emotion. How we act is dependent upon how we feel. And how we act determines what we create. So if we don't change our thoughts, we can't change our results. Our thoughts cause results. That doesn't mean our thoughts caused our person to die, right? I'm not talking about results we can't control. I'm talking about things that are a result of the choices that we make and how we spend our time. And if you don't know this, and not only know it, but take the next step, which is why I want you to keep listening, and actually apply this information to your life, then we will just keep feeling the same way and not knowing why. We will just keep taking the same actions and not knowing how to take different action. We will literally create the grief Groundhog's Day experience for ourselves and not believe there's anything we can do about it. We won't actually know that it's what's going on in our mind that has imprisoned us to continue recreating this day that we don't like. Now, this is a gradient. So when I say a day that you don't like, I'm not really talking about a day you hate. I'm talking about something that's not terrible, but it's also not great. I'm talking about you really want something different for your life. Maybe you don't know what it is, but you know you want it to be different. And you sense that by not changing it, you're leaving something on the table. And you don't like that. Maybe you want a career that's more satisfying. Maybe you want better relationships. Maybe you want more connection. Maybe you want passions and hobbies and new things and travel. I don't know. I don't even care. But I know there's something you want to create, and that's why you're listening. And what pains me so much is when I know that there are those of you who are listening who think that all of those mean things in your brain, those limiting stories that you have about your life, are just true. And because you can't see that they aren't optional, you just decide that this not terrible, but also not great experience is your new normal. And you resign yourselves to it. And I am not having it. I am not interested in that. I want you to know what you need to know to create what you want as a widow, which means understanding what's going on in your mind. So let me give you an example. If your partner died and they left you a business, and a whole bunch of you just started nodding your heads because I have lots of you as clients in Mom Goes On whose partners left you businesses, and you are trying very hard to run that business or figure out what to do with it, you might be very convinced that it is simply true that you don't know what to do next. And if you are convinced that it is true that you just don't know what to do next, guess how you probably feel? Confused? Maybe overwhelmed? Maybe hopeless? Maybe resigned? But it's probably not great. Probably doesn't feel good when you're believing that you don't know what to do next. And doesn't it make sense that a human thinking that would not feel confident about what to do next, would not feel determined, would not feel great? They would feel bleh, confused, most likely. And remember, I said thoughts cause feelings. I don't know what to do next might make you feel confused. That's a feeling. And feelings drive us to do things. Feelings influence our behaviors. Feelings drive actions. So confused humans probably don't make great decisions or any decisions about businesses that their partners left. Confused humans, confused widows, we stay in inaction. We stay stuck. We don't try things. We don't figure it out. We literally prove to ourselves, our thinking, that we don't know what to do, so we don't do anything, and we block ourselves from figuring out something that actually is figure-outable, to quote Marie Forleo. And the problem with that is that as it's happening to you, and this is why I don't want you to take years to learn this, is that you will just be so convinced that I don't know what to do next is a fact, you won't be able to help yourself because you'll just be believing it and you will literally keep proving it true. And this really matters because it's not just this one example thought that I'm giving you. It's all the tens of thousands of thoughts that we have every day. Most of them We are not choosing on purpose. We have very efficient brains that just keep repeating the same thought patterns over and over and over. And all of our thoughts feel true because we keep thinking them and our brain keeps finding evidence for them and our brain keeps blocking out evidence that they aren't true, right? And only showing us the data that lines up with our own thinking. And of course our thoughts feel true because we've been thinking them. But what that means is that unless we know they are thoughts, we will keep creating results that prove them true over and over and over. And this is how we stay in grief Groundhog's Day. This is how we get to the grief plateau. And it's the same old and nothing changes and we don't love it, but it's also not horrible. So we just settle. Same results over and over and over because we're taking the same actions over and over and over because we're feeling the same way, because we're thinking the same way. And the whole time we're thinking that our thinking is just factual, and it isn't. I feel a little fired up about this because this is how important it is to me. This will change your life. And this is a huge part of what I do as a coach. This is why I coach. Because what I can do, what someone outside of your brain can do, is they can show you that the story that you're believing that you think is just factual isn't. I can show you that it's optional. And then, and only then, can we actually get traction. Can we start to get leverage over our own thinking? Then and only then can we use our brain to manage our brain. Can we think about our thinking to choose our thoughts? Are you seeing this? If I hadn't learned this, I would have just believed my best days were behind me. I would have just believed that was a thought. I mean, that was a fact. I wouldn't have questioned it. It didn't feel like something that was optional. It just felt true. He died, therefore, my best days are behind me. He died, therefore, I should just be grateful and count my blessings and be happy that I had it once. But really probably just live for the kids because, it can't really be as good as it once was. I wouldn't have seen any of that as something I could choose to listen to or not. And it's not just that. If you're listening to that and you're like, well, no, I understand that. I can believe that my best days are in front of me if I want. If you haven't created what you want to create, what that tells me is that you are believing something that's in your way. You are not believing the thoughts that would create what you want yet. And that doesn't mean you're broken or flawed or doing anything wrong. That just means there's more available to you. And while I want you to keep listening to the podcast and I want you to keep coming to my free stuff, what I know is that until you get eyes on your brain, it's not really going to change. It's not really going to change. And sometimes I talk so much about the power of group coaching that I don't think people understand that when I'm coaching and Mom Goes On, it's one person at a time. Like I'm coaching one woman while everyone else watches and benefits. But even that is different than listening to a podcast. Even that is different because that woman, even though her life is different than yours, is probably having very similar thoughts to you. She's having very similar thought errors, having very similar patterns that when it's not your life and your brain isn't resisting it, as I point it out to her and help her, you have amazing ahas. You can see what is actually happening. And then in turn, you can see where that same thing or something very similar is happening in your life, in your mind. When it's not your brain in your life having the thoughts, there's so much less resistance. And this is it. Because only once you can see that your thoughts are optional, right? That they are separate from you, that just because they feel true doesn't mean they are the only thought that could feel true. That's when we can diffuse from our thinking. That's when we can get leverage. That's when we can start to think in new ways that help us feel differently, because when we feel differently, we act differently. And when we act differently, we create different results. I'm so grateful that someone told me that I could put any result in my life that I wanted and make it happen, as long as I was willing to change the way that I thought about my ability to do it. So the best way to create what you want as a widow is to have a coach point out to you what you're thinking. Because then when you can see it and see that it's optional, you can change it. And I don't mean Stuart Smalley, Saturday Night Live, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and gosh darn it, people like me thinking. I'm not talking about toxic positivity. I'm not talking about forcing yourself to believe something you don't or putting lipstick on a pig. I'm talking about some thoughts create what you want and some thoughts don't. Point blank, full stop. And there's a whole bunch of thoughts happening in your mind right now. And mine too, by the way, which is why I always get coached. I get coached very regularly and always will. Because as I set new goals, guess what pops up? New thoughts that are in my way. Right? So it's not a you thing, it's a human thing. But if you want to create something different, you have to think something different. And if you want to think something different, you have to know that what you're currently thinking isn't factual. It just feels that way. And then we can go about changing it. And then you can go about creating whatever you want. And listen to me. Where are we? 240 whatever episodes. If you had told me after Hugo died that I would go on and quit my job and become a coach and make more money as a coach than I made in my comfy corporate job and literally wake up and love what I do and work from home and have a flexible schedule for my kids and all the things, I wouldn't have believed you because the thoughts I was thinking at the time wouldn't have allowed it. The way that I saw myself and what I thought I was capable of wouldn't have allowed me to create that result. And it is completely okay if that's where you are. Hear me on that. That's where we all start. We don't need to believe that it's possible for us to create what we want. We need to believe that our thoughts make it possible for us to create what we want, and we need to be willing to get help so that we can change them, so that we can feel better, differently, right? Feel differently so we can do differently, so we can create different results. That's what it is. It seems like it's a bunch of different crazy stuff. It's not that hard, but also it's really hard to do for yourself. So I love that you love my free stuff. I love that you love this podcast. By all means, keep listening. And also, let's coach. Let's coach. Let me show you what's going on in your mind so that you can change it if you want different results. Okay? That's what I want you to hear. 2 things I want you to know. One is, if you don't know what I'm talking about when I say coaching, come to an Ask Krista Anything call. I do them once a month and they're free. Come see what it's like. You can go to coachingwithkrista.com/ask Krista, Krista, coachingwithkrista.com/ask Krista. And you can register and we will send you the information on Ask Krista Anything calls so you know when they are. If you're already on my email list, you should get this information anyway. You don't even have to ask for it. But if you're not on my email list, come ask for that information. We'll send it to you. Right? And then you can see what it's like. But better yet, apply for Mom Goes On. You hear this at the end of every podcast episode. Why do I say it? I say it because that's where I know I can help you move the needle. That's where I know you can get what you need to create what you want. You can love your life again, but it's going to require more than just listening. It's going to require identifying the thoughts that are in your way and changing them. Okay? Okay. Oh, I'm going to go coach now. I have a call in 3 minutes. I'm glad we got to have this time together. I love you. Stand in front of the mirror. If you need to say this to yourself, I love you. You've got this. All right? Okay. Take care. I'll see you next week. Or better yet, I'll see you on an Ask Krista Anything call or in Mom Goes On. Okay. Take care. Bye-bye. If you like what you've been hearing on this podcast and want to create a future you can truly get excited about even after the loss of your spouse, I invite you to join my Mom Goes On coaching program. It's small group coaching just for widowed moms like you, where I'll help you figure out what's holding you back and give you the tools and support you need so you can move forward with confidence. Please don't settle for a new normal that's less than what you deserve. Go to coachingwithkrista.com and click Work With Me for details and next steps. I can't wait to meet you.